The moment I stepped through the doors, I didn't just enter a royal chamber. I walked into the breaking point of an empire. The blue-skinned princess with long, trembling ears turned to her mother in panic and whispered, "Mother, the one I wish to marry is here." In that heartbeat, I understood something terrifyingly simple. I was either about to start an interstellar crisis, or become the first human to change the fate of a galaxy with love. The doors did not open so much as decide to allow me to exist beyond them. A thin vertical line of light scanned down my body, paused at my shoes as if reconsidering my life choices, and then widened with a low harmonic tone that vibrated through my ribs. I stepped forward before I could change my mind. The royal chamber felt less like a room and more like the inside of a living thought. The walls curved in translucent arcs, faint currents of light moving through them like slow lightning trapped in glass. Above, small artificial stars drifted in deliberate constellations, rearranging themselves with quiet intelligence. The air adjusted around me, thinning, filtering, recalibrating to accommodate inconvenient human lungs. At the center of it all stood her. She looked human at first glance, 2 arms, 2 legs, posture straight with the kind of unintentional grace that no finishing school on Earth could teach. But her skin was a luminous shade of blue, not painted or artificial, but alive with subtle gradients like twilight just before night. Her hair fell in a cascade of pale gold down her back, catching the chamber's light as though it had been spun from solar flares. And her ears, long, elegant, tapering gently upward, tilted toward me in absolute horror. For 3 seconds neither of us spoke. Then her ears flattened against her hair. "Mother," she whispered, and the words seemed to echo farther than her voice could have carried it. "The one I wish to marry is here." I would have preferred a more heroic entrance line, something like, "I come in peace," or at least, "hello." Instead, I stood there clutching a small data tablet I had brought as a peace offering, which now felt like presenting a sandwich at a war council. Her mother rose from the throne. If the daughter was twilight, the queen was deep ocean. Her blue skin held a darker hue, richer, threaded faintly with silver luminescence that pulsed slowly along her temples and down her neck. Her blonde hair was braided with thin metallic strands that hummed almost imperceptibly. Her long ears lifted with controlled precision, angling toward me not in panic, but in assessment. The artificial gravity seemed to increase by half a degree as she stepped down. "A human," she said calmly. Her voice carried a resonance that suggested it had been amplified by the chamber itself, or perhaps the chamber was simply afraid of disappointing her. "Yes, Your Majesty," I said, because it seemed statistically safer than surprise. The princess shot me a look that clearly translated to "Please do not joke right now." The queen circled me slowly. The floor beneath her feet brightened with each step, responding to her presence. I resisted the urge to turn in place like an object on display. My reflection shimmered faintly in the crystalline wall, a dark-haired, very mortal figure surrounded by architecture that could probably outlive my entire species. "You entered restricted planetary orbit," the queen observed. "You bypassed 3 diplomatic filters and 1 ancestral firewall." I filed the correct paperwork, I offered. "You submitted it in crayon." That was a stylistic choice. The princess made a strangled sound that might have been laughter attempting to disguise itself as a cough. The queen stopped in front of me. Up close, I could see that her eyes were not a single shade, but layered tones of sapphire and indigo, shifting subtly as internal data streamed across her irises. I had the unsettling impression she was reading not just my posture, but my neural activity. "You understand," she said evenly, "that my daughter is heir to a civilization older than your planet's recorded history." "I do." "You understand that bonding with her would alter succession protocols, trade alliances, and several predictive governance models. I suspected it might complicate dinner invitations." The princess's ears twitched upward before she could stop them. The queen's lips curved almost imperceptibly. Humans, she murmured, as though the word itself required categorization. Your species survives through audacity. And snacks, I added, mostly snacks. The princess covered her face with one hand. Please stop helping. A thin band of light passed over my body again, this time warmer, almost curious. I felt a faint pressure at my temples as the chamber sampled my cognitive patterns. Somewhere above us, one of the artificial stars flickered and repositioned itself. You are biologically fragile, the queen continued. Your bones are dense but brittle. Your immune system is reactive. Your lifespan is brief. I moisturize, I said. There was a silence long enough for regret to bloom. Then, unexpectedly, the queen exhaled through her nose, a soft, almost amused breath. You will not survive our atmospheric storms without assistance. I look excellent in protective gear. I doubt that, she replied. The princess lowered her hand slowly. Her blue cheeks had deepened in tone, a subtle flush, I realized. Her eyes met mine, wide and earnest and absolutely terrified. I chose him, she said, her voice steadier now. Not for alliance, not for rebellion, I chose him. The queen's gaze shifted to her daughter. In that look was not just authority but memory, calculation, concern. Explain, she said. The princess stepped forward, standing beside me rather than behind. The chamber responded subtly to her movement. A faint glow gathered around her shoulders, acknowledging her lineage. When I studied Earth's cultural transmissions, she began, I expected inefficiency. I found unpredictability, humor in catastrophe, bonding without optimization. You also found reality television, the queen noted dryly. I regret that part. I risked a small smile. The princess continued. He argued with a translation algorithm because it rendered my name as combative vegetable. It was inaccurate, I said defensively. You are not a vegetable. The queen's ear flicked. He attempted to repair a diplomatic drone with adhesive polymers designed for primitive packaging, she added. It worked, I said. For 9 seconds, which is technically a success. The queen's gaze returned to me. You are aware that affection does not override biology. I am aware, I said quietly now, but biology doesn't override choice either. The words surprised even me. They hung in the air between us, unadorned. The chamber's ambient hum deepened slightly, as though registering the shift in tone. The artificial stars above slowed their motion. You would relinquish your claim, the queen said to her daughter. If that is the cost, you would accept exile from succession. If necessary. I felt the weight of that statement settle into my bones. This was no abstract rebellion. This was structure, inheritance, identity. And you, the queen said, fixing me with a gaze sharp enough to dissect. What do you offer my daughter in exchange for what she risks? I swallowed. I offer honesty, I said, and loyalty. And the promise that when interstellar politics becomes unbearable, I will make terrible jokes until she laughs. The princess's ears lifted slightly. I cannot offer immortality, I continued, or strategic advantage. I can offer presence. For however long I have. Silence unfolded again, but it was different now, less brittle, more searching. The queen studied us both. The faint silver lines along her skin pulsed once, twice. You presume, she said slowly, that love is sufficient to challenge centuries of precedent. I don't presume, I replied. I hope. A faint vibration traveled through the floor as distant advisors registered anomalies in the chamber's decision matrix. The palace network was aware that something irreversible might be forming. The princess reached for my hand. Her skin was warm, warmer than I expected. Her long ears stood tall now, no longer flattened by panic. The queen watched that simple gesture with an expression I could not fully read. Not anger, not approval, something more complicated. You step into forces you cannot comprehend, she warned. I stepped into this room, I said gently. That seems like a start. For a heartbeat, the chamber felt suspended outside of time. The artificial stars above aligned into a new configuration, one not currently archived in the visible lineage patterns. The queen turned away slightly, her gaze lifting toward the shifting constellations. "A human," she murmured again, but this time the word carried less incredulity and more contemplation. Behind us, distant doors began to open as summoned council members approached, drawn by the palace's subtle signals. Tradition was moving toward us, heavy and inevitable. The princess squeezed my hand once. Her mother's long ears angled back toward us, listening not just to the chamber, not just to the network, but to the steady, uneven rhythm of two different heartbeats standing side by side in defiance of probability. The first confrontation had not ended in exile, but it had begun something far more dangerous: consideration. The council did not storm into the chamber. They arrived the way inevitabilities do, quietly, in perfect formation, as though they had always been standing there, and reality had simply caught up with them. The doors parted again, this time without hesitation. 5 figures entered, each blue-skinned, each crowned with variations of braided blonde hair woven with circuitry threads denoting rank. Their long ears stood upright, angled like antennae tuned to a single frequency: disruption. I became intensely aware of my posture. I straightened, then immediately wondered if I was over-straightening. The princess leaned slightly closer to me. "Breathe normally," she whispered. I whispered back. "You are calculating your breathing." "I don't know how not to." One of the council members, taller than the others and carrying a staff of condensed light, stepped forward. His eyes flickered with embedded data streams. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing to the Queen, "the planetary network has detected an anomaly in succession protocols." The Queen did not look at him. "The network is correct." A subtle ripple passed through the chamber. The princess's hand remained in mine. Her grip was steady, but her ears angled backward slightly, alert, cautious. "The anomaly," the counselor continued carefully, "is biological." "I've been called worse," I muttered. The princess's shoulder shook. The Queen finally turned to face the council. "State your concern plainly." The tall counselor's gaze shifted to me. I felt the faint brush of a scan pass over my nervous system again, mapping electrical impulses, cataloging flaws. "A human cannot integrate into the lineage web," he said. "Their neural architecture is incompatible with our ancestral memory lattice. Bonding would fracture continuity." I raised a tentative hand. "In my defense, I fracture continuity wherever I go." The princess squeezed my fingers harder, which I chose to interpret as affection rather than a warning. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, not at me but at the word fracture. "Continuity," she repeated. "Is it maintained by exclusion?" "It is maintained by preservation," the counselor corrected. "And what," she asked, her voice soft but carrying a dangerous clarity, "is preserved when choice is removed?" Silence. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the planetary AI recalibrated emotional intensity levels. Somewhere above us, the artificial stars shifted again, forming temporary geometric arrays as though observing a chess match. The princess stepped forward, pulling me with her. I tried not to trip over the subtle incline in the floor, nearly succeeded. "You speak of incompatibility," she said to the council. "Have you tested it?" "Testing a human mind within the lineage web risks contamination." I blinked, I washed. "That is not what he means," the princess murmured. The tall counselor's ears angled toward her. "Your Highness, affection can distort rational evaluation." "Yes," she replied calmly. "It often does. That does not make it irrelevant." Another council member, smaller but radiating sharper authority, interjected. "If the air bonds outside the species, the predictive governance models collapse, trade routes destabilize, external systems interpret weakness." I cleared my throat. "With respect, if your entire interstellar economy collapses because one woman chooses her partner, you may want sturdier infrastructure." 5 sets of alien eyes turned toward me. "That was not diplomatic," the princess whispered. "I don't have a diplomatic setting," I whispered back. The queen's lips twitched again before she suppressed it. The tall counselor lifted his staff slightly. A holographic lattice unfolded in the air, a shimmering web of light representing generations of bonded minds, memories layered upon memories. It pulsed with accumulated wisdom, strategic simulations, emotional imprints from centuries past. "This is the lineage web," he said. "Every heir integrates upon ascension. It grants perspective beyond individual lifespan." I stared at the lattice. It was beautiful, terrifying, immense. "And if she does not?" I asked quietly. "Then she rules alone," the counselor replied, "without ancestral guidance." The princess's ears flicked. "I do not fear ruling alone," she said. The queen turned sharply toward her daughter. "You should." There it was, not political tension but maternal. The chamber seemed to contract slightly around us. "You think I support tradition blindly." The queen continued, her voice lower now. "When I ascended, I felt every thought of those before me, their triumphs, their mistakes, their grief. It is not a chain, it is an anchor." The princess held her gaze. "Anchors can prevent movement, and drifting without one can lead to ruin." I shifted awkwardly. For what it's worth, humans are excellent at drifting. Sometimes we discover entire continents by accident. The tall counselor regarded me with visible confusion. "Your species frequently misplaces landmasses." "It's complicated." A faint ripple of restrained amusement moved through the chamber. Even one of the council members' ears twitched in reluctant humor. The queen studied me again. "You understand that bonding with her may deny her this inheritance." "I understand," I said, "but I don't believe guidance must come from the past alone." The tall counselor tilted his head. "Explain." "I come from a species that doesn't have ancestral memory integration," I said slowly. "We have stories, imperfect ones, biased ones, but we choose which stories to carry forward. Maybe continuity isn't about sharing the same mind. Maybe it's about sharing the same direction." The princess's grip tightened again, but this time not from fear. The holographic lattice flickered slightly, responding to the queen's subtle neural command. "You propose," she said, watching me carefully. "That influence can be voluntary." "Yes." The council murmured softly among themselves, low tones blending into a faint harmonic discord. One of them stepped forward. "There is an alternative." Every ear in the room angled toward him. "We can attempt a partial interface," he continued. "A limited bridge between the human neural pattern and a fragment of the lineage web, contained, monitored." The princess inhaled sharply. "That has never been attempted." "Because it has never been necessary." The queen's gaze sharpened. "And the risk?" "Cognitive overload, identity dissolution, neural collapse." I blinked. "Those all sound mildly unpleasant." The princess turned to me, eyes wide. "You are not agreeing to this." "I haven't yet," I said, "but it sounds educational. This is not a cultural exchange program." The queen watched us both, unreadable. "If the human survives even partial integration," the tall counselor said, "it would prove adaptability. It would demonstrate that continuity need not be exclusive." "And if he does not?" the princess demanded. The counselor did not answer. The chamber fell silent again. I considered the lattice floating in the air, generations of thought, strategy, emotion layered like sedimentary rock. "Would it hurt?" I asked. "Yes," the counselor replied immediately. "Honesty, I appreciate that." The princess stepped in front of me now, her ears angled protectively forward. "You will not gamble with his mind to preserve your theory." The queen descended the final step from the throne platform, standing level with us. Up close, I could see a faint tremor in the silver threads woven through her hair, not fear, but calculation stretched thin. "You would risk exile," "I volunteer to try," I said. "Not because I think I'll succeed, but because I don't want her future defined by fear of what might happen." The council members exchanged glances. The tall one nodded once. "Preparation will require time." "You have none," the queen replied. "If this becomes public without resolution, factions will polarize." The artificial stars above began shifting more rapidly now, reflecting rising activity across the palace network. Rumors traveled faster than light here. The princess looked at her mother. If he fails, he will not be discarded, the queen interrupted sharply. We are not monsters. I appreciated that clarification. The tall counselor lowered his staff. The holographic lattice condensed slightly, its outer threads dimming. Very well, he said. We will prepare a controlled interface chamber. The princess turned to me, eyes blazing with conflicting emotions. You do not have to prove yourself to them. I'm not proving myself to them, I said softly. I'm proving that I belong beside you. Her ears trembled once, then steadied. The queen regarded us both for a long moment. You will remain within the palace, she ordered, under protection. I was hoping for a tour, I admitted. You may tour the corridor immediately outside this chamber, she replied dryly. Escorted. That seems fair. A faint, almost involuntary smile touched her lips. The council began to withdraw, their movements precise, efficient. As the doors prepared to close behind them, the tall counselor paused. Human, he said. Yes. If you survive this, you will be the first of your species to enter the lineage web. No pressure. The doors sealed with a resonant tone. The chamber felt larger and smaller at once. The princess exhaled slowly. You are reckless. I prefer optimistic. She stepped closer, resting her forehead briefly against mine. Her skin was warm, her breath steady despite everything. I did not choose you for your bravery, she murmured. That's good, I said. I don't have much. She laughed softly, the sound easing the tightness in my chest. Across from us, the queen watched in silence. For the first time since I had entered the palace, her long ears lowered, not in dominance but in contemplation. The second confrontation had not ended in rejection. It had evolved into something more dangerous. A test. The interface chamber was smaller than the throne room, which felt suspicious. I had learned that in advanced civilizations, the more dangerous the technology, the less space it required. The walls here were darker, woven with threads of light that pulsed in slow, synchronized rhythms. At the center stood a circular platform surrounded by suspended rings of translucent alloy, each inscribed with flowing alien script that rearranged itself when I tried to focus on it. This is comforting, I said. It looks only slightly like a device, designed to rewrite my personality. The princess did not laugh this time. Her long ears were angled forward so sharply they almost formed a spear. You may still refuse. And miss the opportunity to have centuries of wisdom briefly scream inside my skull. I'd regret it. She stepped closer, blue fingers brushing my wrist. If you feel yourself slipping, disconnect. I'll just politely inform the ancestral consciousness that I need a break. Her lips trembled despite the tension. I am serious. So am I squeezed her hand. I don't want to be tolerated. I want to belong. Across the chamber, the queen stood with the council members, her posture straight, controlled. Yet the silver threads in her hair flickered more rapidly than usual. The tall counselor adjusted one of the hovering rings. The interface will be partial, he said. You will not access the full lineage web, a curated stream only. Curated, I repeated, like a museum exhibit. Precisely. That's reassuring. I've survived museums before. The princess shot me a look that clearly meant please survive this one too. I stepped onto the platform. It was warm beneath my shoes, responding to my weight, mapping my balance. The rings rotated slowly into position around me, humming softly. Thin arcs of light connected them, forming a delicate lattice that echoed the larger holographic web I had seen earlier. Human, the tall counselor said, focus on a single intention. The web responds poorly to scattered cognition. That's unfortunate, I replied. My cognition is 80% scattered. Then reduce it. I closed my eyes, my intention. Not proving myself, not impressing a council that could probably calculate my failure rate in real time, her, standing beside her, choosing each other freely. "Begin," the queen said. The first sensation was not pain but expansion. A thread of cool light touched my forehead, then slipped inward like liquid starlight. My thoughts did not vanish, they multiplied. I felt impressions, echoes of minds layered upon minds. Not voices exactly, but currents of memory brushing against mine. A battlefield under violet skies. A diplomatic chamber where peace was negotiated through shared grief. A young queen centuries ago, terrified on the day of her ascension. The pressure intensified. My knees nearly buckled, but the platform adjusted, stabilizing me. "His neural activity is spiking," someone murmured. "Maintain containment," the queen ordered. More impressions surged forward. Strategies, failures, triumphs. I felt the weight of decisions that had shaped solar systems. I tasted alien air from worlds long destroyed. I sensed the loneliness of rulers who could not show fear. It was too much. For a heartbeat, my own memories began to blur. My childhood home, Earth's messy blue oceans, the first time I had seen her image on a diplomatic screen and thought, she looks like she's trying not to laugh. No, I anchored myself to that. Her laughter, her long ears twitching when she was embarrassed. The way she argued with me about whether humans intentionally designed chairs to be uncomfortable. The surge steadied. The lattice around me brightened, then synchronized with a slower rhythm, my heartbeat. "There," the tall counselor whispered. "He is stabilizing." The ancestral impressions shifted. Instead of overwhelming, they began to observe. I felt curiosity from the web, not hostility. Confusion. Amusement. Yes, amusement. An echo brushed against me. An ancient ruler encountering an unexpected meteor shower and laughing in disbelief. The feeling resonated with my own tendency to joke when terrified. I let that connection form. "I think," I managed through clenched teeth, "one of your ancestors would have appreciated stand-up comedy." The princess's voice cut through the hum. "He is speaking." "Unfortunately," I added weakly. A ripple of something like shared humor passed through the current. The pressure eased further. Images rearranged. Not a flood now, but a dialogue. The web probed my memories. Earth cities lit at night, crowded markets, chaotic music. The stubborn human habit of choosing love despite statistical disadvantage. I felt a question without words. Why? Because we can, I thought back. Because we want to, another pulse, less intrusive, more curious. The queen stepped closer to the edge of the platform. "What do you perceive?" she asked. "Your past," I said, "and it's heavy, but not rigid." The tall counselor's eyes widened slightly. The web shifted again, presenting a memory of the queen herself on the day she had defied her own mother, adopting renewable planetary cores instead of conquest engines. I felt her fear then. Her isolation, her determination. I opened my eyes and looked at her. "You already changed tradition," I said softly. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the rings. The silver threads in her hair dimmed, then steadied. The web pulsed once more around me, then began to withdraw, not severing but settling into a faint, stable bridge. A thin thread remained, not invasive but connected. "Containment stable," the tall counselor breathed. "Integration at minimal level achieved." The rings slowed. The light receded from my mind like a tide pulling back from shore. When it ended, I staggered, but remained standing. "That," I said hoarsely, "was significantly more intense than any museum." The princess was at my side instantly, her arms around me before the platform fully powered down. "Are you?" "Still me," I said, "mostly. I might suddenly know advanced agricultural policy." A faint laugh escaped her despite tears in her eyes. The queen approached slowly. Her gaze was not clinical now. It was searching. "You retain individuality," she observed. "Yes," I said, "but I also understand." "Understand what?" "That your lineage web is not about control. It's about continuity of care. You carry each other so no one rules alone." A murmur moved through the council. The tall counselor lowered his staff completely. "The bridge is stable," he announced. "He is compatible." I straightened carefully. My head still hummed faintly, as if a distant choir lingered at the edge of hearing. "I don't think compatible is the right word," I said. "Different, but not destructive." The Queen studied me for a long moment. Then, in full view of the council, she inclined her head, not deeply but unmistakably. "You entered as anomaly," she said. "You stand as amendment." The princess inhaled sharply. The Queen turned to the council. "Record this. The lineage web adapts. Bonding beyond species is no longer classified as fracture." The artificial stars in the chamber brightened, rearranging into a new, permanent configuration, a pattern that had not existed before tonight. The tall counselor gave a slow nod. "It will require recalibration of governance models." "Then recalibrate," the Queen replied. The tension that had wrapped the palace for days began to dissolve, replaced by something quieter but stronger. The princess looked at me, eyes shining. "You are insufferable," she whispered. "I've been told. You nearly dissolved your consciousness. But I did it charmingly." She laughed clear, unrestrained, echoing off the chamber walls. This time the Queen did not suppress her own smile. Later, when the council had dispersed and the palace network had adjusted to its new precedent, the three of us remained in the now quiet interface chamber. "You have altered more than succession," the Queen said to me. "You have altered perception." "I'm good at that," I replied, "usually by accident." She regarded her daughter. "You will ascend one day." "I know, and you will not do so alone." The princess's ears lifted high, proud and unafraid. "No." The Queen extended her hand not to her daughter but to me. It took me a second to realize what she was offering. I took it carefully. Her grip was firm, warm. "You are fragile," she said. "I'm aware. You are brief. Working on that. But you are not insignificant." Something settled in my chest at those words,